Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the first video in the new series on the Arabian vACC YouTube channel in order to get yourself started as a controller on the VATSIM network. In this video, we're pretty much going to be teaching you how to install the Euroscope controller client and either one of the audio clients, such as audio for VATSIM or track audio. Now, this is a long-awaited update to the video initially made on the 31st of August 2019, which was the first edition of this video on how to install the sector files in, back then, the Emirates vACC. The entire guide of this video is also available on the Arabian vACC library, available at library.arabian-vACC.com. You can head over to the Foundations part, Controller Software Setup, Euroscope, and you'll be able to find all of the details on getting your Euroscope set up, as well as installing the sector files and getting yourself observing on the network. There is also a second category for the audio client on the two different clients available. The first kit of software that you'll need is Euroscope itself. You can download the latest version of Euroscope at euroscope.hu and heading to this website here. Go down to the latest public release, which is version 3.2.9, and click on Read More. You'll then be greeted with a page with a bunch of different posts and versions, but the one you're looking for is Euroscope 3.2.9. This includes the update with token authentication. Head over to Euroscope version 3.2.9 and click on the download link. Go ahead and download the software and install it anywhere on your PC that you'd like. The location really doesn't matter, as a sector file will be able to pick up any directory possible. The second piece of kit that you need to download is the sector file itself for the country or the flight information region that you'd like to observe. The Arabian vACC provides 3 sector packages for 3 of its FIRs, one for Doha, one for Muscat, and one for the UAE. All of those files are hosted on files.aero-nav.com, hosted by the AeroNav Association. We aim to release an update every 28 days following the ARAC cycle, obviously to give you the latest navigation data available and bring you updates to make your radar screens look as realistic as possible. Once you're over on the site, you can scroll down and find one of our sector files. You can either search by the FIR code or by searching for the name of the country. In this example, I'm going to be taking the United Arab Emirates. If this is the first time installing the sector file, download the install package and save it somewhere on your PC. Only use the update package if you're here to update an existing version of the sector file. For example, going from ARAC 2411 to ARAC 2412. If the update ever release is not too huge, you can download the update package and overwrite your existing files. This will update the required navigation data for your sector file. We're now going to go ahead and install the sector file. Once you've downloaded the file, installing the sector file is very simple. Take the archive file and you'll see that you'll have all of the files included in the sector file. All you need to do is drag and drop this to a directory of your choice. For me, I have a dedicated sector file folder which contains all of the sector files that I use on a day-to-day basis, or for the airspaces that I control. For the purpose of this video, you only need to have one folder. I have multiple ARAC folders as I'm the one that develops the sector files. In this case, make a new folder. So I've downloaded the ARAC 2412, and inside that folder, you can drag and drop those files. Once you've dragged those files, we'll find a bunch of different files inside of this folder. .prf files are profile files. This is the file that will pretty much tell Euroscope which settings to load, which colors to load, and which plugins to load. The .esc file is pretty much the airspace file, which contains all of the navigation procedures in place, such as the SIDs and stars, and the airspace definitions. The SCT file is what contains all of the airways, the fixes, the VORs, and so forth. The runway file is pretty much the file which contains which runways you have set up previously. Now, note that this will not come default with the sector file. This is generated by Euroscope. In the FIR code folder, or MAE, you'll find different subfolders. In the alias folder, opening the alias.txt will reveal all of the different text commands that you can do with Euroscope. We highly encourage controllers to read this file thoroughly to get an idea of what they're able to do. Think of these as text shortcuts for text pilots, for those that are not able to use the frequency. In the ASL subfolder, you will find all of the different predefined displays for Euroscope. All of these displays are centered obviously at a point of interest. For example, if you go to the aerodrome page, you will see that these are all of the aerodrome displays for the tower controllers for different airports. Another one that we'll most likely use as well is the SMGCS, which is the Surface Movement Ground Control Screen. So now we have displays for all of the airports in the United Arab Emirates FIR. One very important thing later on is picking up the VATIS as well. By going to the plugins folder and going to vATIS, you'll be able to find the vATIS profile. If you're interested in learning how to use vATIS, I would recommend going to the library and going to the dedicated vATIS section in order to know how to import the profile and use the software. It will not be demonstrated in this video, as the purpose is to get you on the network as an observer. If you're interested in doing some reading on the different plugins that we have, you can go to the other folder and read the documentation for the plugins such as Top Sky and Ground Radar. Now that we have Euroscope installed and the sector files downloaded, we now need to download our client. If you head over to audio.vatsim.net and click on the Get Started button, and then onto ATC, Euroscope, you'll now be able to see the installation guidelines for either of the clients. In order to download the Audio for VATSIM client, just click on this link, hit install, and then you're set. For track audio, head to the VATSIM GitHub repository, go to Releases, and download the latest release, which is the Beta 4 version 1.3.0. If you scroll all the way down, you'll be able to find download files for the exe for Windows and also from Mac. And if I'm not mistaken, this client also supports Linux-based operating systems. The advantage with using track audio over Audio for VATSIM is that you're able to actually set dynamically the output volume of your frequency, guard or unicom as required, and able to get multiple frequencies much more easier. And the UI is more modern. Anyway, whichever you decide to install does the same job. Now that we have our Euroscope client installed, our sector files downloaded, and our audio client as well, it's time to set up Euroscope. The first thing you will need to do is head over to Euroscope and start the software. Now, for the purpose of the first time installation, I'm not going to be opening a profile. By default, Euroscope should open the Hungarian VATIS. So let's go ahead and do that. By default, the Euroscope client will have two settings that we will need to change. You'll notice that you'll not be able to automatically select a different profile. This is because by default, Euroscope will pretty much open the last profile you opened. In order to swap this setting, the first time you're on Euroscope, you're going to be maybe greeted with the Hungarian VATIS, which is the airspace of Hungary. If you're not, that's completely fine, as we need to change two settings. Now, my Euroscope looks slightly different as I applied a patch that changes the colors of the system, but the buttons are in the same location. Head over to the other settings menu, which is right next to the UTC clock, and untick both the auto load last profile on startup and auto save profile on exit. By unticking both of these, it will now enable you to select different profiles. Once that is completed, you can exit Euroscope, click yes, and cancel all. Open Euroscope again, and navigate to the folder where your sector files are stored. For me, it's located in the VATSIM library, VATIS sector files. And we'll take the latest one, which is revision 1 of ARAC 2412. For the purpose of this video, I'll be opening Aerodrome Dubai.
And continue Echo 5, square by 64. Full read back via Papa 2, Papa, Echo 5. It's a recorded environment.
Once the sector file is open, you'll be greeted by a aerodrome view, which is the view that tower controllers will be greeted with. This will include, for example, the control zone, the extended center lines, and any other relevant information as required, such as VFR lanes. It's important to note that everything on the sector files, especially in the newer releases, are dynamically drawn, meaning you will not need to fiddle with anything in order to see different configurations. For example, in this profile, the things that you will see on the screen depends on the runways you have selected in your active runway selection dialog. In order to see the ground view, you will use something called ASR fast keys, which are keys assigned for different displays. By pressing the function key such as F1, and then the numbers 1 through 9, you'll be able to cycle through different views. For the aerodrome views, you'll only need to use F1 plus 1 and F1 plus 2. F1 plus 1 will show you the current view that we're looking at here. Pressing F1 plus 2 will swap you to the SMGCS view, or the ground view for ground controllers, delivery. On this view, you'll be greeted with the ground layout of the airport, as well as a secondary aerodrome display on the top right, showing basically the extended center line and the control zone. To go back to the aerodrome view, press F1 plus 1. We're now going to get connected as an observer. So first of all, you need to get your details ready. We're going to head over to the top left of Euroscope and click the Connect button. You'll then be greeted by the first profile made for observers, which is the one you'll be using. It is very important that you take the initials and replace it with your own. The next thing you want to do is put your name in the real name section. Now you're able to put 3 different naming conventions, or if I remember 4, within this section, which complies with the VATSIM Code of Conduct A4B. You can either put your full name, so that's your first name and your last name, just your first name, a shortening of your name, or your VATSIM CID. Any of those 4 works. You'll then put your VATSIM ID certificate number here, and then you'll put your VATSIM password. Leave the info lines as they are, select your facility as observer, your rating as observer, and then the server automatic. Once all of this is set, hit the connect button. You'll then hear that noise saying you've successfully been connected, and you'll see that in the top left corner, it will change to the VATSIM logo. You'll then be greeted with the voice communications setup. You can go ahead and close this window. As you can see, as we successfully connect to the network, you will see some aircraft in the area. Now, at the moment, there is no current active controllers online except another observer. So what we're going to do is we're going to teach you how to pretty much set up your Euroscopes. You're able to see the data on the lists. You're going to go ahead and click on the runway selection dialog, which is 3 buttons or 2 buttons to the right of the clock. Opening this will allow you to select the runways in use. We would highly recommend that you check the aerodrome SOP for the aerodrome you're observing, or ask on the controller online, or check the ATIS. For this example, just by looking at the winds, we can see that the winds are currently at 070 degrees and 4 knots. And because there's no controller online, there isn't a predefined runway in use at the moment. Again, just by looking at the winds, runway 12 is in use. Go ahead and select Dubai as the departure and the arrival, and then select the runway in use. Runway 12 left will be used for arrivals, and runway 12 right will be used for departures. Once that's set, click OK. You'll now see, as I said before, that dynamic displays will turn on. We can now see that some green lines or cyan have started to appear on the screen. These are the standard instrument departures. You have now also noticed that the departures are now populated with aircraft that are relevant to the aerodrome you selected. You currently have 2 flight plans, Emirates 51 November and Emirates 51 November Sierra, 2 A380s going to San Francisco. You've also seen that the arrival list has populated as well. On the right hand side, you can see that the METAR has loaded up over here. You have the shortened version, which includes the wind direction, the wind speed, and the QNH. If you'd like to see the long version of the METAR, you can check overhead at the top over here. You can currently see that you have the long string of the weather information. Right of the METAR, you will see the controllers or observers currently online. At the moment, it's only another observer online, but let's say if there was a ground controller, a delivery or tower, you would see them here. You're able to look around on the screen by right-clicking and panning around. You're also able to use a scroll wheel to zoom in and zoom out. By going back to the ground view, you'll now be able to see aircraft on the ground. By default, you will not be able to see any taxiways, or stands, or intermediate holding points. This is because we have automatically set this up depending on the position you're logged in. But for the purpose of observing, we're going to change a few settings. As you can see, we cannot see any other aircraft on the ground, except this one arrival. This is again because we've set the setting so that the aircraft will only show up if the ground status is set to on frequency. So for the purpose of observing, we will swap a few settings so you're able to see everything clearly. The first setting you're going to change is on this bar here in the settings window. Go to labels and untick no state. You'll see that by doing this, we're now able to see the tag of the aircraft on the ground. We're able to see the call sign, the assigned runway, the aircraft type, aircraft category under Enhanced Wing Turbulence Separation Minima, which is a improved and revised version of the standard ICAO separation or aircraft categories, the standard instrument departure, and any remarks left by a controller. The second thing we're going to do is by going to Function, Maps, selecting the aerodrome that's concerned, so going down to Dubai, SMGCS, and ticking pretty much the taxiways, the crossovers, the stands, IHPs, on from auto to on. Make sure you do not set the one for holding points LVP, as this is only used for low visibility procedures. This will be automatically swapped once the aircraft, or the aerodrome. This will automatically be swapped once the aerodrome goes into low visibility procedures. You'll see that by doing this, you now have a bit more information on the screen. But you might be asking, where are the stands and where are the taxiways? Again, we've done this to declutter the amount of information on your screen, because when it gets busy, the last thing you want is an unreadable ground layout. So in order to be able to see fully everything, just use your scroll wheel to zoom in, and you will see that the taxiways and the stands will populate. Now going through, we're going to take a look at the departure list. On the departure list, you'll be able to see the aircraft call sign and the aircraft type. Now, if you're unsure about the call sign, you can go ahead and click on the aircraft. Be careful that will highlight. To unhighlight it, just double click again. And then look at the very bottom of the screen. You'll be able to see again the call sign and then the actual call sign that's mentioned on the radio. You'll also be able to see the details of the pilot, the aircraft type, their current squawk, and their flight plan as well. On the right of that, you'll be able to see the Enhanced Wing Turbulence category of the aircraft, the current stand number of the aircraft, whether their flight plan is IFR or VFR, their departure airport, the arrival airport, the assigned runway, and the standard instrument departure. CFL stands for Cleared Flight Level. This is where you'll see the initial climb being set for the aircraft. Initially, this will be set to 4,000 feet. The RFL, which is the route flight level, is the cruising altitude of the aircraft. XPDR is the assigned transponder code to that specific aircraft. FPC stands for Flight Plan Checker. This is going to check the flight plan for the most basic configurations out of the UAE airspace. The plugin will be able to determine the first set of airways exiting the UAE, any altitude capping restrictions, for example, to Doha Hamad, and also checking if the flight level is correct depending on the direction of flight. If for whatever reason there's a problem with the flight plan, the FPC will be in a different color in red and will indicate an error. In order to check the errors, you can go ahead and left click and click Show Checks. You will then be met with a private message from VFPC with the call sign of the aircraft saying that it's passed or failed certain different parameters. The DCL section is something that you will not be able to use in Observer, but this is pretty much when we send data link clearances. So do not worry about that for the moment. To the right of that, we have the clearance tick box. Once an aircraft has been given an IFR clearance and has read back correctly, the tick box will be ticked. To the right of that, we have the STS, which stands for ground status. In this field, controls will be able to tell you if the aircraft is pushing back, heading out for taxi, lining up, or taking off, or on the frequency. This is where you're going to see the status of the aircraft. The HS is the old short field, but this is currently being discontinued, so we will not be discussing about this one. The T stands for communications type. If it is blank, that means the aircraft is able to receive and transmit on the frequency. If it's chosen /R, it means the aircraft is able to receive on the frequency, but will only reply via text. And if it's just /T, that means the pilot is a text pilot. In the RMK or the remarks, this is where controls are able to put any sort of information that may be shared with other controllers. This is known as the scratchpad. To the right of that, you have the arrival list, which is pretty much a shortened version of the departure list, but for the arrivals. Again, you'll find the same type of information: the call sign, the arrival airport, the aircraft type, and the position again, or stand. Controllers will be able to automatically assign a stand by left-clicking and pressing auto, and this will pretty much assign the stand depending on the parameters we set for the airport. As you can see, every stand is defined, and everything has been defined to the absolute realism. All of the stands have been assigned for their maximum aircraft type category and which airline parks there, so you do not need to worry about assigning a stand or remembering any sort of tables on your own. The plugin will do it for you. Once the stand is assigned, it will appear in the arrival list. To the right of that, you have the runway for arrival that's been set by the controller or assigned, and then you have the ETA, the estimated time of arrival. Again, you have the communications area, which will tell you if the pilot is able to transmit, receive, just receive, or go via text. The clear to land flag, which is used only for controllers rated approach and above, and the remarks. Remember that this will only show if you have set your active runways in the active runway dialog. Now let's say you'd like to observe a frequency. Open the client of your choice. As you can see, I have just opened track audio. Before we connect, we need to go to the settings wheel and set up our details. Again, put your VATSIM CID and your VATSIM password. Set your input and your output device, and select your push to talk. I would recommend you do a microphone test and see if you are in the green band. Once this is set up, click connect, and you will see that it says connected as Charlie Kilo OBS. You'll now be met with this. This will allow you to select a position that you'd like to observe. For the purpose of this video, let's pretend we want to listen to Dubai ground. We will put the controller call sign here, Oscar Mike Delta Bravo _1 _ Golf November Delta for ground, and click add. You'll now see that the frequency is now added to your window. In order to be able to receive this frequency, press the RX button. You'll see at the very bottom that you're now receiving the call sign Dubai ground on the frequency of 118.35. Whenever a transmission will come through, this will turn orange. You're able to minimize this by pressing this button over here, which will pretty much give you a small window of track audio. Here you'll be able to see the last call sign that's transmitted and also on which frequency. Like I talked earlier, the advantage of using track audio is that you're able to receive on both Unicom and Guard. Now let's say you're using audio for VATSIM. Open your audio for VATSIM client, head over to the settings, put your VATSIM CID and your VATSIM password, set your input and output device, and then also make sure that your microphone level is within the green at normal speaking voice. Once this is completed, set your push-to-talk key, press OK, and you're good to go. We can see that Dubai delivery has just come on, so we're going to attempt to listen to their frequency. Head over to Audio for VATSIM, click Connect, click the plus symbol right below your observer call sign, type in the position, Oscar Mike Delta Bravo delivery, click OK, and now do the same thing, press the RX to receive. You can minimize this window by pressing this arrow and putting the window somewhere you'd like. Again, similar function, you'll be able to see the last received frequency and the last received call sign. When the transmission is sent on the frequency, you'll see this RX receive area turn orange. And that's it. You're now able to observe on the VATSIM network. Do note that this applies to all 3 of the sector files that we have, whether this is for Doha, the United Arab Emirates, or Muscat. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to send a message to one of the training team members, such as the mentors or instructors, or send the support ticket on our Discord. You can also send the message or your question to the community of controls that we have on the Arabian vACC Discord. They'd be more than happy to answer your questions. Welcome to the Arabian vACC.